let's go ahead and get started this morning. Good morning. I'm Ruth. I work at the State Library. We've done this a couple times. Our topic today is pre-CATs and interlibrary loans. This is the last of the scheduled cataloging circles. One of the things that we're going to do as we talk this morning is near the end, I have a form that I would like you, and I will be sending it out to the new cataloging listserv, which we'll talk about that as well, to gauge your interest in continuing the cataloging circles into the future, and in what form they should be, what should be the regularity, what topics perhaps do you want to investigate. So we'll get to that as we go forward. A couple points of cataloging news. Some of you know this if you're keeping up with your listserv emails, that all of the Evergreen, Indiana lists, actually all of the state library lists, are being migrated to a new management software. I guess we'll call it that. I'm sure it has a better name than that. That Lynn is yelling at me from the other room again. The software is staying the same, but they're migrating to a new server. So there may be some hiccups in the next couple days, and you'll need to change your URLs that you're sending to, and depending on your filters that you have, you may need to update those as well. So that's something that's going on. The other thing is that, and this is related to our last cataloging circle, the point of frustration coming up when as we were talking about the parts and how many of the single disc DVDs there are, and the best practice being the decision of the cataloging committee to apply parts to those for consistency in the catalog. Bob and Anna and Lynn have been working diligently to automate part of that, and there has been work yesterday, it continues today, may even go in tomorrow, to have parts applied to approximately 100,000 records. So, which would put that project right at about 50% done. So that thing that we're anticipating going on forever and ever may actually get closer to a completion date, which is cool. So there will still be plenty of work to do, but some of it done for. So there is progress on that. Okay, let's get into pre-CATs and interlibrary loans. One of the things, as I was thinking about these cataloging circles, was I knew when they were going to be scheduled, and I knew there were some things that we needed to talk about. But at some point I just said, okay, we need some topics to fill in here. Here's something that's been a question in the past. Let's go ahead and throw that in as a topic. Which is why, as we move forward, I would really like you all as catalog staff to actually, suggest topics rather than just going with these ones. But this was kind of the last one. It sometimes can be an issue, and one of the things that was provided in the feedback form is an issue that I'm sure a lot of you will recognize. So the first question, and this was another one, there wasn't a whole lot of feedback provided because it's a pretty standardized thing now, especially for people who have been using Evergreen, Indiana for a significant amount of time. The question was, how has pre-cataloging or cataloging on the fly been utilized in your library? The phrase cataloging on the fly isn't utilized a whole lot in Evergreen, Indiana, but it is in other ILS, and it, for staff who are coming in, that may be from another library that used some other software, that may be a terminology that they recognize, as opposed to the pre-cataloging, which I didn't know that until I was in a library where they talked about cataloging on the fly. I was like, well, what on earth is cataloging on the fly? And they described the actual procedure as like, oh, you're pre-cataloging. Which then they looked at me and said, what's that mean? So, but the examples for how those things were used are things that you will probably expect to see. They're interlibrary loans, circs, which we can talk about we should talk about it if you want to. I don't have much to say though. Items that are found on the shelf but not in the system, whether they were accidentally deleted or those magical things that happen to disconnect the items from the records. Who knows? And then one of the things that was put in there that has previously happened were pre-cataloging non-cataloged paperbacks. They didn't really indicate what they do now, whether they just catalog them or they have them available as a non-cataloged item. So what are some other things or some things that you want to say about those things that have been submitted here already? And I'm going to have this so that I can actually add to that. Make this bigger on your screen. Hopefully you're seeing this. And I'm watching the chat and listening. Feel free to unmute yourself if you have a thing to say. Okay, we're good there. Are there other ways that you are using cataloging on the fly or pre-cataloging capabilities in your library? And if not, I mean, for us, I think it's less that they get accidentally deleted and more that we delete them because they've been missing for a while and then they mysteriously show up on the shelf again. Yeah, that's kind of the who knows what happens to disconnect them. And that is part of that when you go to actually delete them, but they are still there. Was it the library gremlin that just put it back on the shelf? I don't know. Possibly. Yes. Well, so at Hagerstown back in the day, we had a person who brought their stuff in. Well, okay, they didn't say they did this. They had some overdue stuff and they went and they shelved it and then said, hey, look, I found this on the, well, in some cases it was still in the, well, in that case, it was just overdue. But then there have been other things where they just walk out with it because they can and then bring it back, which is, I guess, technically borrowing it, but not in the manner prescribed. So. Welcome, Melissa. I'm glad that you made it in. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next part of this. What questions or issues do you have related to pre-CATs or interlibrary loans in Evergreen, Indiana? So there were a couple of things here, but then there is a comment that is much longer that I will read in a moment. So this question was raised here. Yes, Anita's recognized this right away. How often are other libraries, other than the person who submitted this question, deleting their pre-CATs out of the system? Or how are you handling the deletions?
Do you mind if I just speak this issue?
Sure.
We have recently had several that were pre-cataloged because the catalog staff wasn't here, and the playaways are specific. They
Mm-hmm.
laid here for a while, and so the individual had curbside service and wanted those, so the staff slapped a barcode on there.
And
Mysteriously, they went to another library as ownership. I don't even know how that is possible, but I had 4 or 5 of them in a row from the
oh,
same person. I thought, this doesn't even warrant a help desk ticket because it's impossible. I was still able to delete them, which I should not be able to do if they were at another library. I think it was Fortville or something. It was
yeah.
weird.
Yeah. So I saw that ticket come through. There is a hole in the software, and Lynn can speak to this a little bit.
Yeah.
Where somebody can grab ownership of pre-cats.
What happened?
Now, I appreciated Monica a while back said that she tries to attach that to the actual record so that they will get a circulation. In that case, I just deleted it and circed it to myself and put it back in the system. It was weird.
Pre-cat items are all attached to the same title record. And the title record itself is a specific title record. It's just the title record database ID is -1. Okay. Mm-hmm. So what happens is when you add a pre-cat item, it still has to go through the whole. It has to have a volume. It has a title record, which is -1. Still has to have a volume, and it still has to have a copy, and it still has to have some information in those fields. What happens is sometimes we like to keep that volume record set as Evergreen, Indiana. What can happen is someone can go in there and try to edit that volume record because they're thinking they're editing their copy and they're not. Because what they tried to do is they edit the call number and then try to transfer their copy to whatever MARC record they want to transfer it to. And what they should have done was transfer it to the new MARC record and then edit the volumes and all that. And usually that's how it usually gets messed up, is that someone tries to copy over, tries to edit the volume before they transfer it to their copy, to the title they want to transfer it to.
Are they trying to attach to a pre-cat record?
No. What it is, they have a pre-cat record.
Right.
All right. They have an item in their hand. It has been done pre-cat.
Right.
They go in and try to edit. They edit the volume for that pre-cat item.
Oh, as opposed to editing the.
Instead of transferring it and then editing.
And then editing it. Yeah.
They edit, then transfer. So that's how it gets messed up. And if y'all see it messed up, give us a holler. We'll fix it. But all pre-cat items should be owned by Evergreen, Indiana. The volume is owned by Evergreen, Indiana. If that volume is not owned by Evergreen, Indiana, but owned by another library in the consortium, just make sure it messes it up. Just make sure we know it, and we'll fix it. I mean, it's a 5-second fix.
So that's essentially what happened then, Anita, is that rather than those playaway volumes being owned by Evergreen, Indiana, so that you could get at them and do the thing, they ended up being owned by Fortville because they went to do their thing in the wrong order. Is there a way to force good behavior on that or not right now?
No, there's not.
Okay. Would it be a development thing, or is it just a stop doing that thing?
It's more of a stop doing that thing.
Oh, okay.
Well, I didn't know if we would be able to edit them or not, or attach them or not, as soon as I saw the library owning it, and so I just deleted them. And that was fine. I mean, your question on how often we delete them as soon as we see them. Our circulation manager runs reports, and when she sees them, we just delete them.
Right. And we try to keep that as a generic type. But I mean, we try to make sure that title is generic. The actual title record is generic, because when you add a precat, you can add a title author, and it's a temporary title author that's attached to it. Precats have their own special thing in the database and how they work. But yeah, so anytime you see anything wrong with a precat item, that especially like, okay, its owning libraries are saying they're at another library and stuff like that. Because their owning library may be at a library, is usually a library you can't work at, you can't make some changes that you should be able to make otherwise. So anytime you see anything like that, it's not only just, you guys remember, it's not just affecting you, it's also affecting everybody else in the consortium. So whoever is the first one that sees it and reports it, yay!
Yeah,
Because we don't see these precat items like y'all do.
Yeah, so just put in a help desk ticket and it'll get it fixed. Yeah.
Even if you delete the ones.
Catherine has a comment, unsure how to handle them, but you can run a report to find them. And I think Anita brought up a good point for how to think about the precats, how often you delete them out of the system as soon as you're done with them. Once that is not something you're utilizing, get rid of it out of the system. Or if you see it in there, do something with it. Unless it may still be circulating, in which case it needs to remain, but once it's not, it doesn't.
Throw in a bucket to go back and look at later.
Yeah, whatever that thing is. But buckets is a good way to put them. Are we just supposed to blanket delete them? It's worried I'm deleting a real item somehow. Sounds like that's resolved for me. I wouldn't blanket delete anything. Well, that's not true. Unless you've put it in a bucket, you've already reviewed it. But if it's reviewed and then you're getting ready to, you're sure that it's ready to go, then you can do that. What do you think? Sarah just turned on her camera, so I think that means that she's got something to say.
Sure. I was just going to say that that I'd say after a certain point, you could probably blanket delete them, but you kind of just need to have a process in place. So when they come back, they're supposed to be sent to cataloging. Like that's the process. When they get checked in, they automatically get routed to cataloging. And so your CERC staff need to know what they're supposed to do with those things that get routed to cataloging. So either they're trained to just delete them, or they're trained to send them to cataloging staff, or what have you. Like at our library, we use precats for ILLs, and so they go to the ILL library and that person deletes them. And then they also get used, for the random item that somebody brings up and wants to check out and is not in the catalog. And then those come to me. And in tech services, we decide, well, are we going to recatalog this, or are we just going to delete it and, hey, we got a bonus CERC out of it? And so if I recatalog it, then I transfer the holding to another record, and then as Lynn pointed out, then I update the volume information. And you can just delete it and re-add it, but I don't do that because I want to retain the fact that it's CERC'd, because that's the whole reason I'm re-adding it anyway. And also, the other thing about when you re-add it is Jason Boyer always told us you should re-barcode it, just because it can cause wonkiness otherwise.
Yeah.
The barcodes are retained in the system even if they're not active. So if you try to reactivate it, there's your wonkiness comes in.
Right. So yeah, when it CERCs as the precat, it CERCs with that original barcode, but that was on the item. But then when it comes back to me, then I re-barcode it. I do a replace barcode once I've transferred that volume. And I
And Catherine said, what does review mean? That's essentially what it is. I mean, you have that thing and you decide what you're going to do with it.
Right.
And as long as you know what you're going to do with it,
so sometimes I go, well, this is a, 2015 travel book and we have the 2020 edition, and I'm not going to re-add it just because somebody randomly decided to check out the 2015.
Right.
And sometimes I'll go, oh, this is a novel that we don't have another copy of and somebody did borrow it, so hey, we'll keep it and maybe somebody else will borrow it too.
Right.
It's just for collection purposes, I review it.
So I have a question about using them for the magazine. So you're not cataloging the magazines, or you're sending them out before they get cataloged? Just kind of waiting for that. And then you're not cataloging them, but you're wanting to retain the titles. Is that why you're pre-cataloging them rather than circulating them as a non-cataloged item? Okay, yeah.
Melissa, I've done that at another library where we, all of our magazines, when they got checked out, they got put in as a pre-cat item. But those items, immediately when they came back, they got sent to cataloging. Those were also automatically deleted as a pre-cat item. Actually, they were thrown into a bucket, and the bucket everything in that bucket got deleted on a weekly basis. Because of the circulation staff at the branches, or any of the staff at some of our branches couldn't delete items themselves. They could just throw things in buckets, and then we went and deleted them, or marked them as deleted, and then I had a script that ran that deleted those items.
I love buckets so much. I'm just saying. I just think that they're amazing, and I'd like to adopt one or two.
They have so many uses.
That way the magazines could get circulated. You had the title, you had an issue, information about the magazine, so you knew exactly which magazine the person had. So when they called you up and got the overdue notice, they knew exactly. You knew which magazine they had. They knew which magazine they had, so they could find it. A lot of times they couldn't find it. So yeah, that's a great way to use it. You just have to remember the cleanup processes behind it if you're going to use precast for magazines. Because those are, sometimes most people think magazines are ephemeral things that circulate. But I've also worked with libraries that we cataloged every single issue of the magazine that came through, every single branch, location, everything. It was all cataloged.
Yeah, and it really just depends on how your patrons best find your stuff. I mean, if they, yeah, that's it. How do your patrons best find your stuff? And magazines kind of fall in that weird, a weird thing. There are other weird things. There's so many ways to use them.
I've also done serials where we had a generic. We had a full serial records, but we just had one item that says we hold the current issues. Had a really weird barcode. They actually used that barcode to check out the items to the people, and then immediately after the people left, they checked the item back in. So it was like, we don't care if you bring it back, but we just want to make sure we caught the circulation.
Well, and that's that now, whether or not it was being utilized at that point, that is really the definition of what you would use non-cataloged items as.
Right, but the difference between using just a generic barcode for any issue of that particular magazine is when they checked out that it printed on the receipt the title of the magazine they checked out.
Yeah. But if they're not getting it back, who cares?
Well, we care that they knew which magazine they took home.
Are they not like looking at the magazine?
Well, they are.
I mean,
But you look at that receipt and says time.
right. But they don't have to bring it back though. I mean, it's gonna be sitting on their table forever.
Well,
I mean,
thing
I'm just trying to, or somewhere.
We didn't care whether they brought it back or not, but we didn't tell them that.
Oh, okay. Fair. Okay.
They were expected to bring it back.
Right. Okay. They didn't realize that you were not anticipating them necessarily bringing it back, but you wanted some of them back maybe.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to read this comment. I put in here misscans when it's circulating, and I know from experience and conversation that this is on and on and on. And as you're using self-checks, this becomes a little bit more of an imperative because people are in a perceived hurry at that point. Oh no, this broke, can you fix it? And then they come to CERC staff and there's this expectation, it's broken, fix it please. So I'm going to read verbatim what was submitted. An issue that's not the software's fault, thank you for saying that bothers me is when staff create unnecessary precats. Sometimes this is because the barcode scanner or RFID reader misreads the barcode. So Evergreen tells a staff member that the item doesn't exist. The staff member then immediately checks it out as a precat instead of trying to scan the barcode again to be sure that it's scanned properly. We also sometimes end up with incorrect and or unnecessary precats because when a staff member checks out an interlibrary loan, they scan the owning library's barcode instead of using the barcode that local procedures require, whether it be in CERCs or whatever. Yeah. And then, of course, and you guys will all recognize this, ISBNs might also be scanned instead of a correct, or UPCs, instead of a correct barcode, again, triggering a precat. This is just where everybody nods and says, yes, we hate that so very much. And what do? Let us think of appropriate punishments for CERC staff. So is there a way that those things are managed? Oh, by the way, I love CERC staff. I don't actually want to appropriately punish anybody.
I say punish them.
No punishing. We call that rehabilitative. No, never mind. I'm not even going to go down that road.
As someone who has actually worked with CERC staff about this particular issue, because it had gotten really bad at one point.
It is definitely an ebb and flow thing too, where it like gets out of hand and then somebody somewhere says, y'all need to stop that. And then it gets better and then it comes back up. Okay, Sarah, take it away.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, if in times of, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit worse right now, because in times of like higher stress and pressure, it can be, more likely to happen because you're not necessarily being as careful.
Anita, you made a comment up here. I'm going to go back to that real quickly if I can get there.
Which one are you talking?
Well, it was about those precats, which, okay, so the item checks out poorly. A precat is created because it's been scanned and it's on the patron's record. It comes back and it's checked in just beautifully. Nobody ever knew it was even checked out, and that thing is still on the patron's record. So how are those issues? Is it something that cataloging is dealing with at all? Or is it something that the CERC is seeing and then complaining about how terrible the software is? And
circulation manager notices that it is an ISBN, that it is one of the barcodes that are still existing from one of the other libraries that has not been covered up, before they joined Evergreen. It was a bad scanner. And this is one thing, if it is a lazy or a bad scanner, the thing to do is to get rid of the scanner and repurchase something that's more aggressive and can actually read the barcodes. But so she'll notice that it's on one of the overdue list. And so she's aware, she knows how to pay attention to that. One of the conversations that we've had with new staff would be our old barcodes may have had a decimal point at the end. They may have had a letter at the end. And if you're paying attention, you'll see that that's either missing. Count the numbers, type it in. And also, this is huge. I have no idea how this ever got started. If an item is captured at another library for a hold at our library, that means it had an identity at that library. It came to our library, and when we checked it in, it printed the slip. It's on the holds cart. When a staff member goes to check that out, there is no way that's going to be a pre-cat need. That library had an identity for that item. We had an identity for that item. Check the scan again. I mean, they would be pre-cat, an item that's got
that has a hold on it.
Hello. So yeah, we've had a few discussions on that too. Pay attention, but you know, this is not their job. Cataloging is not their job.
Oh no, cataloging isn't, but paying attention is.
So if it has a slip in it, chances are a good scan will tell you that that's for that patron, and that
well, and if all else fails,
for
you
that
can
patron,
just type
they
in
have
the
been
number
notified. They got a notification. Yeah, this is. I'm sorry if I'm ranting. I'll just stop now.
No, I think anybody that has been in a library, any library, but especially in Evergreen, Indiana, where we do so much resource sharing, has filled their conceptual bucket with all of these different workflows that have gone awry. And really, that piece of paper that actually has the printed out, like, barcode number on it, and now you don't understand that that is associated with the barcode that's printed on that thing that you can now see in the screen if it's actually
don't know where to route it now. Yeah, totally mystery item.
Now, one of the things that it does put a little bit of a layer, not of ambiguity, but kind of, because it puts patrons in the place of circulation staff, is self-check. And so then there's that anxiety, oh, I did something wrong. Well, no, maybe it's just, I mean, circ staff is going to be much more able to handle the concept of it just scanned it incorrectly. Let's try again, as opposed to a patron who may think they broke it. But then if you add RFID into that as well, then that, speaking of RFID, here comes Monica, that adds another layer of black boxedness. I made that word up, so I had to try it a couple times. Monica, do you have sound yet? Do we see your face?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. We're talking about your comment about the issues with misscans and things, as well as RFID and self-check things, and just the frustration. And at this point, we're sharing the frustration with you.
Thank you.
We just took care of a bunch of open transits. These problems generally do get found. And maybe the trick is, more than anything, is managing the frustration, because it's not a software issue. It's not really, I mean, apart from there being some capability of Evergreen to like physically move the hands and then also like the eyes, and to process what they're seeing on the screen. Is this accurate? Is this not accurate? Until we have that developed into Evergreen, which hopefully is like never, it really is a staff issue.
Let me put it this way. I know it's not on the development roadmap anywhere in the next
Absolutely
15
not.
years.
I am envisioning robotic arms and like neck attachments to go into your cerebral cortex or something stupid like that. If there is a lingering pre-cat on a patron record, is there something in the handbook about how to remove those? You can just check them in.
Lynn, how about a shock collar? Could we go for that?
Oh yeah, let's do that one. Every time they misscan an item, give them a shot.
Yeah,
Shock collar.
Catherine, you can just check those items in,
Because
and deal with them that way, and then delete them. Yeah, exactly as Sarah says.
Because I mean, a lot of those lingering pre-cat items that are on patron records, you're never going to find the actual original item that was checked out.
Mm-hmm.
They're never going to find the original item that was checked out.
Or if you do find it and it really needed to be pre-cataloged, you can pre-catalog it again. Don't maybe just route it to cataloging at that point. Yeah, you may need to backdate them, especially depending on how long ago it was. They may have gone to lost, or if your library assesses overdue fines yet. So I keep saying that because I am anticipating that someday nobody's going to charge overdue fines.
Yeah, Sarah, you may find it if you have the title information, but if they didn't put the correct title information, they put the subtitle versus the title, or...
Am I the only person? No, I know I'm not. I'm talking to a room of catalogers. If you were circulating things, this would be, I mean, you'd say, hey, there's a field that says title. I shall find the accurate title and put it in. Look, there's a field that says author. I should fill it in with the author as it is actually represented on the title page verso. Look, there's an ISBN. There's an ISBN. I'll put that in.
You would think that would be straightforward, but this is why we need special training for catalogers, because sometimes it's harder to tell than you would think.
I think that is actually, that's training for circulators. I mean, catalogers too, but...
I think the recognition of a title versus a subtitle versus a series title, I think every single person who works for a library needs to see that the differences, especially on some of these like children's
exactly
series.
Anita. It's not even about putting the wrong title in. I mean, you can track down wrong title. Is this something that's on the item? You can track that down. But when you leave it blank, well, that's a whole world of blank that you can't track down. I mean, why would you even do that? Put something so it can connect to something somewhere down the line. That's my little rant. I don't understand the blank fields. They're easy fields to fill in if you are looking at that item. Unless it's like an old thing that doesn't have an ISBN, but it still has a title. And if it doesn't have an author, it has an editor. Throw something in there. Yeah, series title versus, especially if they make a big deal about the series title being big on the outside, and then, oh, look, there's this little, it looks like a subtitle as opposed to the actual title. I didn't know this was going to be such a fraught topic. Let's talk about circs. I'm kind of kidding about that, but if you want to talk about circs, we can.
Just like get the soul stirred up, don't you?
Stir the pot.
But when you have that person who works the circulation at desk, who's only there part-time, 20 hours a week max, and you're expecting them to be able to really look at this item and figure out what its title is.
Seriously, are you going to use that as an excuse?
Yeah.
You work here as an employed person, and I'm expecting you to read.
I will say
you're generous, Lynn.
I will say that they may be working under pressure of a frustrated person standing in front of them.
That, or like,
That's
I mean, I came from a large library where we would have a line of maybe 10 people that we're trying to work through. And I mean, we had 6 circulation desks, and there was someone at every desk trying to work through this backup of lines, especially like right at summer reading program end.
So I have circulation training this afternoon. the fundamental skills workshop, and you better believe I'm going to be talking about a couple of things, pre-cats, but then also deep breathing and stress management, and the
I
things
mean,
that reading.
because I usually got called up to the circ desk at that time because I was one of the few people that they could call up to the circ desk, and I would work. And yeah, I would look at the tape and I would probably put the wrong title in because I would just be glancing at the book. But I would also say I was also one of those, if it misscanned, I rescanned it again to make sure it was truly not found and it was reading the correct barcode.
It might be appropriate to mention that I do know catalogers that will scan an ISBN and get a bad scan, and they will enter a book. So, it might be a good time to look inward also on books that have been added that have not needed.
Right. Well, and that was a thing too, as I'm thinking back to when I was running reports and looking at shelf lists, which was always a time to do cleanup on the bottom and the top of that list, what was actually in order, and then what was the outliers as we're looking at that, and looking at those barcodes. Do they follow the standard? This does not follow the standard. What is this thing? And then what needs to be fixed in that. And I would always find something in every list that I was running, even if I wasn't running the list for that purpose. I mean, I would still always look for the consistency in those expected fields. Is the data actually what I expect to see in there? And then hopefully find stuff in there. Yeah. And yes, rescanning is vital. If it looks funky, try it again. Try it again. So this question has been posed, and let's we've talked about this just a little bit, but let's go back for just a second and talk about it. What to do with pre-cats when catalogers receive them because CERC checked them in and they are routed to cataloging. How do you manage that that process, and this not necessarily being a fraught thing, just to talk about your workflows as that goes. You get.
I'm going to talk about the workflow we used at a previous library I worked for.
Okay.
When I pre-cat item that was checked in, depending on what the item is. If it was I'm also going to start strictly about like books, DVDs, things that we know that are not ephemeral type items. The item was checked in and it got sent to cataloging. Well, our cataloging department had one set of shelves set aside, one little cubby set aside for those pre-cat items. Our head of cataloging at that point would go pull all the items from that section, go through them, see which ones she wants to add to the system, which ones don't need to be added to the system, do the whole collection development thing on these items, because she couldn't go back and look at circulation statistics and things like that. Then at that point, if she wanted to add the items to the catalog, she would transfer those items to the cataloging to the record that it needed to be transferred to, and finish out the cataloging and all that for that particular item. For the ones that she did not want to add to the system, she would then go in and delete the pre-cat item, go in and delete them, and then make sure she marked them all weed.
So they didn't get accidentally shelved.
Yes. So then she would actually mark all those things weed, and they would go through the full weeding process at that point in time. The rest of the weeding process is make sure all the things that are and either go to friends, or if they're in like really bad shape, or really bad, really out of date material like a medical book
mysteriously disappear.
We actually recycled books.
Mm-hmm.
We had a whole section set up for recycling. Well, we actually totally destroyed the book before the book got put into the dumpster or whatever.
Yeah, which you have to do anyway for recycling.
Yeah. So it got sent that way. So it really all depends on, but like I said, all the books in circulation got put in one little section and then updated from there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there were some things that were not missed. But you still have those items that come across that they were mis-scanned and stuff when they were checked out. So when they're checked in, they were just sent to the shelf with that. But we ran reports weekly. I'm trying to remember what the report schedule was. There's a weekly report that had everything that was checked out via Precat. It was a weekly report that was ran. And it was usually if they were checked out for over 2 weeks, it got put on this report. And those are the items that say, hey, are these actually items? We would actually go check the shelves for them. And half the time we found 3 or 4 of them. And those items, if there was a Precat in the system for that particular item, but we actually find it on the shelf, we would actually go back through and delete the Precat item. Check it in off the patron records, delete the Precat item, and move on.
Monica, what stuff do you have going on there?
Well, I didn't catch what, I think I was reading the chat, and I didn't catch what Lynn said about when your collection developer would decide to keep an item, what she did with, or he or she did with that, how the item was put back into the system.
If the item was determined to be kept, and the barcode was the actual barcode on the item, and it wasn't the item was not in the catalog for some reason. It was deleted previously, who knows why. We would transfer, the title at that point would be transferred from the Precat record, transferred to the actual record. That it needed to be, or a record imported, or the record found. However the record got into the system, the record was in the system. Then that item was transferred to that title record.
Okay, so that's
then the item itself was edited. To add the circulation modifiers, and make sure it had the correct call number and everything at that point.
Right. So I believe that workflow is what is recommended by our cataloging procedures. But what I've been doing for a long time is instead, we still, withdraw ones that we don't want back in the collection. But if we do want to put them back in the collection, it was recommended to me several years ago to submit a help desk ticket, because Bob can undelete those barcodes, and then 1, you don't have to catalog it again, and 2, it keeps its circs, its number of circs, because it's still the same item that it was before it was deleted. You're on mute, Ruth. Ruth,
you're on mute.
Hear all of you tell me that. Thank you. You're talking about an item that has been previously cataloged and deleted, not just something that was cataloged on the fly.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, it was, but it was something that had a barcode previously that was attached to an item, a bibliographic record then.
Correct, because we don't, we haven't for a long time, if ever, done on the fly things. So usually the only times our precats get used, or is if, something was on a report, lost or whatever, we deleted it, and then but it was still on the shelf and a patron found it and wanted to check it out. So then it's checked out as a precat, and then when it comes back to cataloging, Bob will undelete it for me, and so that it still has the number of circs and history and stuff that it did before we deleted it.
Anita makes a good point in the chat too, that the long lost and missing items, especially long missing things, being undeleted, being auto deleted, I don't want to say likely, but oftentimes they are on the shelf. They may be misshelved, or they may just continue to miss the gaze of a shelf reader. I think you need to replace the barcode. You don't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You go ahead.
You
not if
don't
not if he's reactivating it. You don't.
Right.
Yeah.
If Bob undeletes it, you do not need to replace it. If you are adding it back in, like Lynn said, or like the cataloging procedures say, then yes, you need to add a new barcode.
I didn't have a Bob previously, so
well, he's pretty handy to keep around.
Yes, he is.
Yes, for sure.
So because I didn't have that access to our catalog, I couldn't go just magically go into the database and undelete an item. They thought I could. Half the time, I just magically make it reappear. But yeah, those, if it did exist before, Bob can go in and undelete it. It's just a simple field we just make it true to false.
Right.
Or false to true.
Whichever, depending on what the question is for the thing.
Yeah. So if you've got, and you can keep them all together and send Bob a whole bunch of them at one time.
Unless you only have one or two, in which case just put it two.
Especially if you're going to sit down and do a whole bunch of these at one time, I would just put one help desk ticket for them all at one time. Yes, Bob is the best.
Yes, Melissa, we do have a Bob. He is our tier 1, tier 2 support person. He's one of the first people that sees your help desk ticket if you put one in, and he handles the server side stuff. Okay, we are coming close to the hour, and I want to give a couple reminders and talk about a thing. But prior to that, are there any other questions or concerns you have about pre-cats or interlibrary loans? Nobody has taken me up on CERCs. I just giving you the option, but I'm not like actually, no pressure whatsoever, because CERCs. You get to the count of 3. CERCs is a topic for CERC. I don't disagree with you at all. Except for that means I would still have to talk about it, but that's okay. If he has to undelete the record, you probably want to check and make sure it's not a duplicate, When he undeletes it, yes, Jennifer, it does bring back the item use count because all of that stuff is still retained there. It's essentially just activating that item again. Okay, so the next thing, first of all, I want to remind you, if you have not done so, to make sure that you put your name in chat so that I have a record of you being here. And don't just put your name, like say hi or something, because it doesn't seem to collect you saying your name for whatever Zoom's purposes. I don't know. It seems to think it's smarter than it actually is. And your email, and if you want to send that to me privately, that's fine as well. So the next question is, this is the last scheduled cataloging circle. We had 7 for this summer, this COVID season, whatever we're calling this thing. I have found significant value in it, but this is not for me. This is for all y'all. So I will be sending this link out in the follow-up email as well, so you don't need to worry about clicking on it right now when you can't actually click on it. But I would like for you to, if you so desire, to indicate whether you'd like to continue with the cataloging circles, and then if so, well, I'm going to change that where it says required there, because you might answer no and not want to answer any more questions there. But if you do want to, how frequently would you like them to be held? I have not put bi-weekly in there as an option, but you could put it in other. And then what topics would you like to cover? And they could be repeat topics if you want to. I mean, if we want to revisit something, there's no reason not to do that. So I will be sending that out, and in the next couple days as I prepare those follow-up emails for you. The other thing is, there were people who came in after I said this initially, and this has to do with the parts project with DVDs, that a lot, there is an ongoing automation project right now, like it is happening right now, to add parts to about 100,000 records for those single part DVDs, based on the cataloging committee's decision to have parts for all video discs. And so that is Bob and Anna and Lynn are working on that. Well, Lynn is sitting right there, but the compute, she is looking at the thing that is keeping it going. So it should be about 100,000 records that have parts automatically assigned to them because of this script that they are doing, or the process that they're doing. Lynn, is there anything you want to say about that, or you just want to let that be right there? It's happening.
It's happening.
Okay. And also make sure
Bob's got it under control.
Make sure that you check your email for the messages about the listserv. The cataloging listserv is obviously, very active, and so there may be some glitches or momentary misbehaviors as we migrate to the new server between today and tomorrow.
All the list goes on the new servers as of 5 o'clock.
I have so many people saying 5 o'clock to me right now. Friday night, 5 p.m. That's from Jeremy.
He's doing the actual migration.
He's the one that's doing it.
So
but we're going to give him till 5:30, because sometimes things happen. Huh? Okay. Don't send cataloging lists after 5 tomorrow. I mean, until when? You'll receive a welcome email from the new thing saying, hey, you can use this thing. Yeah. And if you are multiple lists, you're going to receive multiple welcome emails. You may not want to read them all, but I encourage you to look at them, because you will need to update your URLs if you want to send to the lists.
Right. The email addresses for all the lists will be changing. The main thing that will be changing is that the portion after the @
And I believe it will be at list.library.in.gov.
Yes.
So it'll be actually easier to type, I think, because it's just muscle memory, but that's just me. Okay.
Well, the current list are list.in.gov. So we just added a library in there.
Because everybody needs a library.
The main reason we're doing this, because you should have all gotten an email from me today or yesterday about this, is that the IoT, in all of their wisdom, is decommissioning their listserv servers. So that's the reason we've spun up our own, because to us, listservs are huge. To them, they're not so much of a big deal.
It'll be nice to have them in-house too.
Yeah, and we'll be able to expand them and stuff like that with them being in-house.
Okay, it is 11 o'clock. Anything else? Make sure that you get your name into chat if you have not done so. And if you're in here, I have your email, so you don't need to worry about that. But if you put it in there, that no harm, no foul with that either. I will be sending out the this form that we talked about, and then as soon as, and this is me assuming that we're going to continue these, I don't know if that's the case, but I'm going to assume at this moment, as soon as I know, then we will move forward with getting them on the schedule and notifying you. Have a great day.